Star Wars 7x7 episode 3064. Happy Andor finale day. Yes, today episode 12 of the Andor series drops. It's the season 1 finale. We are not going to do any spoilers about it, but there's been a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, and I thought I'd address some of that with also additional news that's come out over the last day or two. So let's just dive right into it. Punch it. Hey Rebel Razzer, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So we'll do a little bit of Scoundrel business real quick. I know earlier this week, or was it Sunday or Saturday, past few days, I had said that we would probably look at week 7 Andor results and decide whether we were going to do an episode about that or whether we were going to wait until episode 10 to talk about how the series is performing on streaming. So the week 7 numbers are out, and I feel like, let's just say something real quick about it because it kind of ties into everything. Anyway, the numbers are a little bit higher. We're at 418 million views for the 7 weeks of Andor, and it follows a pattern where with the Book of Boba Fett and with the Obi-Wan series, after the initial week's debut, the next week's numbers dropped and the next week's numbers dropped, and then it started climbing back up again. And it's the same exact pattern that we're seeing with the Andor series from the first week's release, and then down and then down and then up and then up. So we are still seeing that same pattern with the Andor series now, so that seems like a very good thing. I grant you, we are at 418 million views for week 7, which is definitely less than what it was for the Book of Boba Fett. It's less than the Mandalorian series, but we've talked about all the reasons why it makes sense that it would be a little bit lower, so I'm not going to rehash all that stuff. But the reason I thought, hey, let's talk about this now has to do with news that's coming out about Disney and also rumors that are kicking around. So let's start with the rumors because I think it will be good to establish that, because when we talk about the news, I think that will set the rumor situation straight. And I did talk about some of this on Twitter already, so if you have already seen this, then this might be a little bit of a rehash, but hey, that's okay. So the rumor is kicking around yet again that Kathleen Kennedy is going to be out the door at Disney, that it's going to happen this time, sometime in mid-2023, either before or after the release of the Indiana Jones movie. And it does seem like there's always some sort of rumor about Kathleen Kennedy being forced out of Disney, forced out of Lucasfilm or anything like that. It seems ridiculous, but it's coming on the heels of shakeups at Disney. So Disney had their earnings report. We talked about that, at least as far as Star Wars news went earlier this month. But the thing we didn't talk about, because, why bother, is that the earnings report results were definitely lower than what industry analysts were saying, and shockingly lower apparently, to the point where the board of Disney decided that they needed to make some major moves. Suddenly, Bob Chapek, who's the CEO of Disney, is no longer the CEO of Disney, and Bob Iger is back as the CEO. And the reason why they fell short is because there were greater than expected losses in the segment of the business that includes streaming services. And so the issue isn't so much that there were losses, because they were telling industry analysts that there were going to be losses until about 2024 when they expected to get profitable with all the streaming services, but the losses were a lot bigger than what were expected. And so Kareem Daniel, who is the guy who is heading up the division that included all these streaming services, he has been let go apparently as well. So the board of directors acted to reassure the shareholders that they're taking action to make sure that everything is fine and everything is good and all that fun stuff, all the Wall Street stuff, right? But the fact of the matter is that Disney Plus and also, the other streaming services with ESPN and Hulu and all that stuff, they're on track for profitability, and they're about to introduce an ad-supported tier of Disney Plus. That's going to bring in more revenue, and then all the advertisers who are advertising on that ad-supported tier, that's going to bring in more revenue. So they're definitely on track. It's really just the expectation that they didn't set the expectation properly in terms of the amount of losses. So where this ties in with Kathleen Kennedy has to do with the fact that Marvel and Star Wars are together the biggest drivers of viewership on Disney Plus. So if you wanted to make a case for why the streaming businesses are losing money right now, it wouldn't be because of Star Wars, because they are driving business for Disney Plus, as opposed to all of the other things that Disney Plus is doing, right? Marvel, yes, they're also driving the business. So Kathleen Kennedy and Kevin Feige are the ones who are really driving value for Disney Plus over these 3 years that the service has been active. And this is coming from a story from The Hollywood Reporter released in March of this year, where they looked at where the streaming minutes viewing was coming from in terms of Nielsen ratings, like we've been tracking for Scoundrel Business and Jedi Business with the Obi-Wan series and whatnot. And it's the Marvel series and the Star Wars series that are absolutely above everything else that Disney Plus is doing. They're the things that are driving the business. So why on earth would they ever want to replace Kathleen Kennedy when she is absolutely one of the major drivers of success for Disney Plus? I mean, they made it clear, Disney did, that in 2017, 2018, that they were going to pivot their focus as a business to look at streaming services and say, this is the future of where things are going. And Kathleen Kennedy got them there. The Mandalorian is inarguably a tremendous hit and got Disney Plus off on the right foot, for sure. And of course, Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy go way back. And so, yeah, there's no reason to believe that Kathleen Kennedy's job is in jeopardy for any stretch of the imagination. It really is crazy to consider. And yes, I know, it's entirely possible I'm wrong. That's certainly possible. But all of the evidence that we see suggests that there's no reason to think this, no matter what rumors people are talking about. So to sum it up, it basically comes down to a failure of expectation management. It seems like Disney, for one reason or another, did not properly manage the expectations for the losses that they were experiencing in building the streaming business. They knew that they were going to be taking losses for a long time until they got it to profitability, but they didn't necessarily get it right in terms of how big the losses were going to be and telegraphing that stuff to investors so that they weren't surprised, and to Wall Street analysts so they weren't surprised, so there wouldn't be this crazy sell-off of Disney shares and have the price drop and shed all the shareholder value and stuff. And so because of that difficulty with expectation management, that's why all this shakeup stuff is happening behind the scenes. But there's no reason to believe as a result that Kathleen Kennedy's job, or Kevin Feige's job for that matter, are at risk because of what's going on here, because they are the prime drivers of value creation for Disney Plus. And that's what I've got for you on today's episode of the show today. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.